Hello, Dumelang Sambonani, South Africa. A very warm welcome to your #1 youth current affairs show. Of course, Sikibalelaga Expressions. This is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline Maphala. You know, following the president's recent budget speech address, the question we are asking you today is simply this: is Black Tax Ubuntu or an exploitation of young people?
Sithetha kanye ngalonto namhlanje nkubeni Dumla ke ukhalosa kalubisi uMandlongoti siyinkqubo ke ye-expression siyasafumana icham lokuba sincokole nomnye wosaziwayo abazenzele igama in the music industry. Ndixela yena kaloku uMakhadzi nothe wazithengela indlu emva kokuba ekhe indlu for umama wakhe, utata wakhe nomakhulu wakhe. Sithi sebenza mogirl. Owona mbuzo ke siwubuzayo apha ekhaya: is Black Tax Ubuntu or exploitation? Make sure that you are part of this important discussion. Let's check this out.
Now we're on location in 4 ways. We're going to be meeting musical sensation, superstar, award-winning, phenomenal. She's the diamond of South African music. I'm talking about Umakadzi, and we're really going to find out from her what she thinks about this issue of black tax.
Black tax decision, but to me, I feel like it's a choice, and also it depends on how you were raised and the background of your family.
You bought 3 homes for your family members, 1 for your grandmother and 2 for your parents. I mean, what motivated you to do that?
Firstly, I grew up without my mother. I grew up with my grandmother and my father. And then I took more than 5 years without seeing my mom. And then the time I started meeting her, I think it was 12, 13, somewhere there. So she was already in a new marriage. So when I go there, how they were treating us, it was bad. Not the husband, but the relatives. My prayer was to just have money so I can make sure that she move from that family and have her own house. If the husband wants to stay with her, she will still stay with her, but then her staying there because they were not treating us good. My grandmother, we grew up in a 2-room with my cousins. She made sure that every time I eat, the little that she could afford, because that depended on the pay. So our meat by then was eggs. When I am eating eggs, I was eating meat. So that love actually made me realize that the most important thing that when I get money, I must make sure that my grandmother should sleep. The problem comes when they demand. They don't have to demand, you must just do it from your heart. Exploitation is when they start demanding your own salary because you have your own life at the end of the day.
My cousin, she's a very good girl, and then Kingwana, yes, coming but Kamakaloraning. Ke motho mogolo e khona go naanela motho mo lomo o kwela batho botlhoko o ratang batho o sa rateng go bona o ka re o sad ana go bona sekgetho sa bokare se shoshwa bana question ya Makazi ha bolela fela ke auntie did you eat auntie are you okay? That's the only topic Makazi ya ka o botsang ka no tswa mo Makazi mo mmereko wa ile nna ke mo mmereko wa.
This thing ya gore if maybe they see their children working, they must demand more. It's not okay. At home, they must not take advantage that I'm working well and then I must build a mansion. I also have a life. They must just appreciate whatever they're getting.
So that was my conversation with Umakadzi, and obviously, you know, you saw me pulling a couple of moves there and so forth. But I mean, of course, we are having a very important conversation in studio today around black tax, but most importantly, how would it impact you as a young person? But to help me unpack this very important issue that we're discussing, I'm joined by Nak Mhlongo, who is an author of a book called Black Tax, as well as Ndumi Hadebe, also with a similar topic, or at least similar topic for her book, also called Black Tax. But the angles are a little bit different. A very warm welcome to Expressions. It's good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jackie.
You know, I want us to hit the ground running. We've just come back from, you know, the budget speech, and we know, Uguti, you know, economically, things are really tough for young people. So maybe let me start with the poll question. I mean, do you feel that, you know, this issue of black tax is an issue around, you know, exploiting young people, or is it about Ubuntu? Should we start with you, Nick?
Okay, thanks for having us, Jackie. I think the question of black, it depends on which side of the fence are you standing. I mean, if I'm an uncle, for instance, who is addicted to playing dice in the township, I will always exploit you. It's good for me, you know. If I'm a mother who's, for instance, addicted to playing Fafi, for instance, and I want my daughter to support that, that's good for me. But if I'm a struggling person who has just got work, for instance, you know, it's an exploitation. To some levels, it's an exploitation. If, for instance, I'm expected to be the head of the family, doing all the things that sometimes are unnecessary, I won't grow, you know. So I think it's a question of, as I say, it's a question of, it's the most important topic amongst us black people. Of course, we live black tax, as we already said. And because we don't come from a generation where there's wealth. You know?
And look, you make a very good point, because it's about context, isn't it? And I want to find out from you, Ndumi, what was the motivation behind your book? And what kinds of issues do you touch on in your book specifically with relation to this topic that we're discussing around black tax?
So the motivation actually was inspired by Nick's book, Black Tax, is it Ubuntu or is it a burden? And I felt that question was actually quite critical. And in realizing that there isn't a clear-cut answer, then as a coach, I got to a point where I actually realized 3 years down the line that it is about boundaries, not so much about money. It's not about how much money I'm making. The question is, do I have space to actually talk about black tax? So in one of the things that I mentioned in the book is the elephant in the room. Everyone is struggling with black tax, yet nobody talks about it in the families. So we talk about it on social media, but not with our families, right? The struggle to say no, or the struggle that the one that actually does the most gets asked the most. So when then do we stop? So in the book, Handle Black Tax Like a Pro, I'm basically advocating for black people, brown people, to learn the principles around boundaries, knowing what they are, knowing how to own them, because we know what our boundaries are. We just simply judge ourselves.
Okay, so then, because we have to be very clear on the messaging that we are sending to young people who are watching the show, where do we draw the line? When is it selfishness, right? I mean, we're such a self-focused, self-absorbed type of a generation of young people who've benefited from the sacrifices of those who've come before us and before them. You know, so where do we draw the line, especially when we understand that there is still a responsibility that we should have in terms of Ubuntu and a sense of community and rectifying and addressing some of the imbalances that we have in our society, Nick?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things, I think it's addressed beautifully in Ndumi's book. But in this book, actually, that's when we expose what's happening around black tax, I mean, the exploitation. But where do we draw the line? I think that's when you... if you are it's about us as family, for instance. Families should not expect, you should, when you help somebody out, you know, when you help one of your, you know, siblings and whatever out, it should come from your heart, not to expect something in return, you know. And I'm saying this because I grew up under black tax. I'm where I am because I've been helped by other people. But no, it's not necessary that everyone is like coming from the situation where I come from. So I think the line can be drawn maybe by also, you know, the educational things that we always have. You don't sponsor, for instance, things that are unnecessary, that are not putting the family forward, for instance. You know, I cannot sponsor somebody to, as I say, the example I mentioned earlier on. I cannot sponsor somebody that is addicted to drugs, for instance, to always give them money to go and buy drugs. Or somebody that is addicted to gambling.
Yeah.
You know, so
And
that's the line. Well, there are a few things,
Yeah.
but there's one of the lines that we can look
Okay.
into.
No, I mean, we're going to obviously delve a little bit more into it, I think,
Sure.
in the last segment of the show. I think I like this idea around boundaries and being able to set boundaries as a young person. I mean, do you feel that you're being exploited? You know, do you feel your family is making demands on you? But again, where do we draw the line? I mean, what about responsibility? What about a sense of community? What about giving back and just having that sense of gratitude to say thank you for allowing me to have the life that I have currently right now? We continue with this very important conversation after the break. On the flip side of this is Colosa. You're watching Expressions.
Ngiyela nisahleli nathi apha e-Expressions. Saqhubeka ke nokuxovula ingxoxo etshisa umbunzi i-Black Tax. Siyakumema ke apha ekhaya into yokubana ube nathi kumakhasi ethu onxibelelwano usibhalele. What are your thoughts on this topic? Is Black Tax Ubuntu or exploitation to young people? To unpack this discussion ke apha studio, I'm joined by Dr. Malinga. Dr. Malinga, welcome to Expressions. Right?
Mama kunjani?
Ngiyaphila, right wena?
Right wena?
Aye, so bright, so
Siyabonga.
relevant, silapho. I mean, speaking of Black Tax, I mean, you have a very painful experience that you also shared on social media. How has your experience been with Umbawe Black Tax?
No, you know what? It's not painful, but sometimes it's painful. Ngizokutshela ama pain ukuthi angena kuphi. Ngoba you know when ukhulele ejarateni engenamali, you know you are hoping that ukuthi one day I will help those people, my people. I will change the situation. But it's bad when we change the situation and maqeda lapho abantu labo obachange the situation bangakunaki when you need a little help, like happy birthday doctor. You understand? Every time who baculela my happy birthday, you understand? Kuthi when we have attend that they are not attending. Because I mean, I built a house for my mother, I built a house for my grandmother. Ubaba mna la khona umile lapha ufunana nendlu. Do you understand? Uyambona ukuthi ulindile naye. So it's painful ngoba sometimes you forget your dreams. Uyabona sometimes even unokufila ngathi yazi ngabe angakhanga izindlu lezo, and then I did my businesses that I wanted to do when I grow up. You understand? Ngenza ama guest house lapho we 100 rand per hour ngena phuma. But they come and come. The guest house. Yabona so ngiyazi ukuthi sengidilile ngama dreams wami, and then okuncane lokho ama 10% lawa ngalahlela kibo ngoba sometimes you'll build for your parents or you'll sponsor your parents or your family only to find that good mase uphelelwa amandla awusena ne business awusena na next and you're not appreciated the family yakho. SABC took my things and no one came to rescue in my family.
Your experience, but I mean, it turned out beautifully. Lessons experience. And in most black communities, you know, you must bring back to the community. So, how, as young people, how do we draw the line between okay, these are the expectations from my family, but also I need to save, I need
it's not easy to say what can be done ngoba usebenza ngenhliziyo, because of when we are helping abantu basekini it's equals to heart attack. Attack heart it man bancede ngoba you know how painful the rain lapho ngoba nami I used to have a book engoma ingoma ibuka yami yengoma yanethwa imvula, so I know the pains of not having food. So you can't say I'm ngoba strategize so ngoba there are different families. Kunabanye bethu thola ukuthi we are sponsor family uyanceda only to find that nemali zakho lahlela kibo bakujikela mabashona babhalisa laba ababathandayo. It's so painful. Bashonile when I'm next. You understand? So you will never we understand. Mara nobona enye awuthi phethi rupa emkhukhwini ekibo, and then you'll judge that person kanda was the pains lay family ekhosayo towards the man. You understand? Yes.
And ukube nengoma kule minyaka egqithileyo sithi ba akulaleki xa kunemali. So in this situation of Black Tax.
Hey, ziyabuya mama, but guess what? Angisho thina we are stars. We are made for these things. We are rockers. Good is ne talent elkhona alikakapheli, and then lokho sikusebenzile emuva abo via Orlando nan basabhadarana namhlanje. And then mina into emnandi ngama a simple guy who can as in ne family angizistrafing into ezinye angipophe ama champagnes and whatever.
Simple.
So yes, and amaphepha yawe wanting the force of gravity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so but akulaleki mawunemali abanye bathi kuyalaleka mawunemali. You understand, because of you relax. Yeah, mara ngisho ukutrenda le ukuthi akulaleki mawunemali because you want to go out and spend. Mara guess what, kuzalunga.
Kuzawulunga. Yes, kulungile, icama kulivubile. And also, I mean, because, I mean, as young people, especially looking at graduates, xa sowusebenza, do you think mhlambe it's fair that sikwazi ukubhatala le black tax ngapha kunenye edibanisa nefamily?
Hey, siyabuya mama. Asiboneni, because of, like I said, man, angisho abazali banokuthi mina bathanda first born, bathanda second born, third born. Now ikunika pressure uphethe imali mara bongathandwa. Hey, kuba nzima yana. So mara uzanokhipha in the name of Jesus. Hallelujah. You understand? Kuthi uyisebenzisa ku Jesus. You understand? So sizayikhipha mara ungazikhohlwa in anything that you do. I think a fair parent will advise you ukuthi mntwanami siyakubona uyasinceda. Mara ungasakheli upstairs. Sakhele le ncane leyo, we will be fine. Mara laba abazali benyoka, they will say sifuna konke. Ila ubona khona ukuthi dala baloko bangakuthandi, they want your downfall. Kunabanye abazali they bawisa abantwana babo because of noma ngathola umakoti naye amakoti bamzonda blind ngoba bafila ngathi uzodla the black tax. You understand? Uyidlela emzini wakhe of which bayifuna la ekhaya.
Sure. Hi, thank you so much for your time. Hey, thank you so much for ixesha lakho. Ndiyathemba into nabantu abatsha bathe qiqi bavuleka amehlo ngale besetha ngawo. And I think one question that I want to pose to uJackie kukuba xa sithe nge-black tax, what is black tax? Why don't we have white tax?
Yes. But I know, we are good struggle.
Yes,
that's
yes,
why I go
yes,
black.
yes. All right.
Hallelujah.
You do not move a muscle. Be sure that you are part of this discussion. Do not move a muscle. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Yes,
Welcome back. You're still watching Expressions, your #1 youth current affairs show. Today we are having a very important, at least, discussion and conversation in studio around the issue of black tax. And the poll question that we're asking you, Kochai, is simply this: is black tax Ubuntu or an exploitation of young people? The segment before with Dr. Malinga. So if you missed that segment, I don't know where you've been, but you know what? We're going to wrap up this very important conversation in this segment because we want to be able to leave young people with a few nuggets. Nick, I want to find out from you. We've discussed a few issues. I mean, Dr. Malinga was talking about, I think, the issue around exploitation, where parents are demanding, where black tax and and all of those kind of different things. Are there instances where black tax can be a good thing within our communities as black people?
Definitely, yes. There's a saying that amongst us black people, for instance, wherever you are, if you cut your finger, the rest of us bleed, you know. That's very much important. Why I'm saying this is because imagine, I'm just giving you a scenario. Imagine where I grew up, for instance. We grew up calling somebody that is replacing my mother, my own biological mother. We grew up calling them mother. There's a reason for that. Because when your mother is out there working, for instance, who's looking after these kids that are here? You know, they don't demand anything from you. They are looking after you. Also, for instance, there are things like personal experience. For instance, I went to university through the help of the money that I got to register at university. Was we call it gazetting. Gazetted by people around my community. Yeah, exactly. So there are lots of instances. I can mention lots of instances. And in most cases, it's exactly what black tax. We just give it a name. Sometimes a name, this name has got a bad connotation. But in fact, it does have
some positive.
It brings our spirit of Ubuntu. Because we're people that live together. You know,
yeah, because, you know, there's no I, there's we. You know, I am because you are. But in Ndumi, I want you to leave us with some tips. How do we handle black tax, like pros? What tips can you give young people, Kochai, just to set those boundaries and not make the same mistakes that, unfortunately, people like both Dr. Malinga have made?
Well, the starting point is that people can actually use Black Tax as a family building exercise, starting with addressing the elephant in the room. So through the book, of course, then we can read how to do that. How do we identify what Jackie's needs, wants, thoughts and feelings are? Because based on that, you can then decide what your boundaries are. And you also can approach the family in such a way that you're not accusing. So you can't be like, you know, you, mommy, you make me buy a fridge. Now you say I am broke. No, you simply say that I actually feel this way. This is how I'd like to proceed going forward. So it's more of a suggestion. It's non-accusatory. And it's in the learning about boundaries that people can actually communicate boundaries without jeopardizing the relationship with love and compassion. It is possible.
And I love that. I think conversation is definitely what's going to change just the game when it comes to Black Tax. A big, big, big thank you, Dumiso and Nick. Thank you so much. And young people, please get those books, read them, bring them. I think there's some gold nuggets that I think we can leave with what could be left through that book. So thank you so much, Dad.
And thanks to Expressions that we're having this discussion.
Yes,
very
it's
important.
It's vital.
Siyayiqola ke siyayiqukumbela kanjalo Expressions yathemba ke mntomtsha ufunde lukhulu kodwa ke asinishi nodwa uDJ Finqo no DJ Slender banqangile besithi phala phala.
Thank you for watching. Bye.
Samba mama Ferrari, fashion danye, Samba mama Ferrari, fashion danye. Bossa, unande phala. Bossa, unande phala. Feshando danye. Nieda. Feshando danye. Bossa, phala. Bossa, unande phala. Bossa, phala. Bossa, unande phala. Feshando danye. Nieda. Feshando danye. Feshando danye.